And good morning. Welcome to Focus on Stafford County on 1590 KVGB 97.7 FM. We get you caught up on what's going on to the south of Great Bend. Joining us on the program today is Stafford County Economic Development Director Carolyn Dunn. Going solo today. This is like the old days.
It is. I'm actually going to have to talk today, aren't I?
Well, okay. Well, hope Ashley's having a good summer.
She's actually representing us at a conference related to youth entrepreneurship competition planning. She's not on vacation. She's working. She's working. She's representing our county. And Kathleen, she's at a training for the VISTA program. So it's a statewide kind of convening. She's in this week. And
see, that's what happens when you bring in talented individuals to help fill things, because then they go on these important ventures, and that leaves you back to take care of everything.
Right.
Well, Carolyn, let's get going underway, and we're going to, I think, talk about the Business Incubator and the remote workspace, and I know remodeling's underway there, but just kind of a quick overview of how the Business Incubator is going right now.
We've been talking about this for a while, and our hopes and plans and everything, and it's actually coming to fruition right now. We did get word of approval for a USDA grant, so we are moving full steam ahead on the renovation. It's basically been gutted on the ground floor and reconfigured in a way that's going to be functional for us to use for this kind of program. So it'll have 3 individual offices and an area with 10 workstations that, are kind of a call center setup. We'll have 2 ADA compliant bathrooms and a conference room, and then kind of a separate work area for our 3 AmeriCorps members. Small space, but we're going to squeeze every square inch of usability out of it. Some of it's been, kind of an unfinished garage up to this point. So again, we're squeezing every bit of usability we can out of it. It's just been, I don't know, it's fun. It's a flurry of activity. I keep talking about, we're making hay while the sun's shining. We're trying to get this to a point of, substantial completion. That's actually an architectural term. That's not what we're talking about. But, we want it to be complete to the point of being able to paint and lay carpet squares, because next week we will have the Bike and Build group here that has
they're back
again.
They're
back.
That's
so, and I love that group because they bring such energy to the work we're doing. It's fun to have a group of 30 young adults that are just energetic, eager for doing something that, represents progress and contribution to the world. And they're back. They're going to be here on Wednesday next week for a day of work. And so we've really been kind of using that as some discipline as to how to get this project really going. And
where's this located at?
It's 311 Broadway in St. John. It's on the city square.
Okay,
it's on the east side of the city square. It's
I
a 2-story
know where
building.
it's at. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So the upstairs of the building is the apartment where our AmeriCorps members live, and then the ground floor is the place where we carry out our programming. I can go into some detail. We're getting more and more definition about exactly how we're going to execute that remote work program.
Yeah, that's... Because I think, people listen to this, and now we're kind of trying to wrap your arms around this, exactly how this is going to work.
And we've also kind of been in that mode of figure it out as we go along. It's probably something where we balance the idea of what we think is going to work with what we know grant funding will pay for, and trying to define it within all of those parameters. So, for example, a business incubator is something that shouldn't say a lot, but some grant programs, including the one that we did work with, will fund. So an incubator being the idea that you may have a space where you make it available to those who are interested in starting a business, and maybe you provide them with some business coaching or some assistance in finding startup capital and so forth. The thing that we, I think, have kind of grappled with is the idea that what if you build that kind of space and you don't have that many people that are at that stage of wanting to start a startup business? Are you going to hear the crickets chirping? Could we do something that's a little more proactive in helping people find a way to earn a living in that kind of space? Not just sit there and plan, but actually maybe have a more immediate way to garner some income. And we know that there's a lot of opportunities to work either directly for companies remotely or do contract work of some sort, or, freelance type work. And so what we're looking at doing is adding that kind of feature to it. It could be looked at in the kind of lens of you're starting your own business. If you're kind of more in that freelance mode, and I may do some contract work for this company, I do some contract work for that company, you're kind of a solopreneur is one way that it can be characterized. But some people may really just be more comfortable working as more of a contract, just a direct employee of a company. And even that, though, takes some kind of assistance, perhaps, or at least some knowledge on how you even find those companies and what they're hiring for. So that's the essence of what we're trying to offer at our incubator, is some support to do that. So as we've gotten this going, too, it's been kind of exciting. We have become connected with another group that is similarly starting up this remote work concept in a rural area called Rural and Remote, and they're funded largely through the Dane G. Hansen Foundation in Northwest Kansas. Sure. And so they've we've had some conversations, and they've kind of said, we'd like to have this program in other areas besides just the Northwest Kansas area. And would you be willing to consider being a hub in Central Kansas for this program? And we said, yes, we would love to do that. So that's helping us also. They're a step ahead of us in some of the ways that they have learned to process people's applications and so forth. And so it's kind of helping us define our process too. So by working with them, we'll have an application that allows us to identify someone's remote job readiness and gives the necessary information we need to help the job placement and support process. So first of all, an intake assessment. We'll do an interview of the applicant and determine what stage in the process the applicant should start. So in other words, some people maybe already have enough work experience they could maybe kind of jump right into some job possibilities. Some people may benefit from some training of some sort. That's what those two parts of the process will ascertain. If you do want to do training, there's several options. We've highlighted some programs that are available through Network Kansas and some of our grant applications that we have submitted for this funding. Additionally, Rural and Remote has two different programs that I think could be really helpful. One of them is a Master of Remote Work certificate. It's a pretty short program. It costs $200. I think it takes about 3 weeks to complete, and it kind of provides you some certification that you can show to employers on your knowledge and skill and specifically how to work remote. So that's one of them. And then the second one is a lot more involved. This is my own interpretation of it's almost like having an associate's degree or something like that, but it's a certification in coding. And so it would be a 3-month process if you do it full-time, and more like 9 if you do it part-time. It does have some substantial cost to it, but we have ways that we may be able to offset that. It's about a $12,000 program, but when you come out of that, you've got the skills to do computer coding, and there's a lot of demand for that out there. So the training part, move on to the work experience. So the trick with some of them, like if you did get your coding certificate, you don't have the work experience. And of course, a lot of employers want to see an element, not just of education, but also practical experience. So what we would be able to gain more with the Rural and Remote, and this will be something that, takes some time to develop too, but we'll be looking for ways that we can give people a work experience in a sheltered way before we send them out to just find a job on the World Wide Web, I guess. There's active work in developing partnerships with businesses within Kansas and to some degree outside of Kansas to give some work experience. The employer may have some incentive to participate with us because we can offset a lot of the costs of the person doing the short-term work experience. But the idea is if we can build that into our program, the people we work with will be so much better positioned to actually compete for good jobs around the country against people from anywhere that might be interested in a particular remote work position.
How many people would you have in this? The 3?
We're geared up to have 18.
Okay, really?
Yeah. Ultimately, I see no limit to it, but we have office space for 18.
Okay, so what comes first? It's like the chicken and the egg here, okay? What comes first, the applicants or the businesses that are looking for these type remote workers?
I think we need to work with some individuals first. And we'll probably, I'm going to say it will probably work best if we work with 3 people at the get-go, and maybe not all 18 as one big class. But we're at that stage. We're about ready to start those intake assessments.
Is this like a small college?
And then, well, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
I'm sorry. I'm just
saying. Maybe. I have joked before about starting Stafford County Community College, but it's not that.
Don't raise those flags up.
And ultimately what also we will be able to do through the USDA grant, it basically is a subscription to a company or a service called Flex Jobs. And that is a service that has the job listings of thousands of companies in dozens of job categories. They've done a lot of the work of filtering through what are legitimate opportunities, because we know that there are some scams out there too in this, but we have some assurance that the opportunities being listed are legitimate opportunities. They also provide some support in placing a person with the right job for them. And so that's that final step, the job placement support.
Where will these people come from, these applicants? We don't know?
Well, we do have some kind of established relationships with the Circles program. We've presented to them several times about how our intent to launch this. In fact, a number of them signed basically statements of support for our grant applications as we turn that in. So I think that may be one source of referrals to the program. It could be anywhere. It could be somebody that comes to town and takes sometimes we've been familiar with the situation that when the school district recruits someone or the hospital recruits someone, part of the game is also having a place for that spouse to find their place. And so it might be such that the spouse to someone who moves here for a specific job doesn't have an outlet for their particular expertise locally, but might be a fit for remote work. I feel like I've had a couple of good examples over the course of time, and now I'm drawing a blank on them. But I, for example, am familiar with a woman that worked remote in food sensory science. It was a very specialized field. It's not something that every company around here just hires, but she had an expertise that was useful to a company from afar, and she did the work remote. There could be things like that. There's rural and remote will characterize 3 general types of remote work opportunities. So one of them would be technical. That would be your computer programmer types. And it takes, a pretty specific preparation and education to do that. There's technical. There's professional. That would be something like the food sensory scientist that I'm talking about, or it could be in an education field. There's a lot of opportunities actually for remote work in education. So you might be teaching some version of an online class, or there's a lot of opportunities to teach Chinese. That was one that I watched a particular webinar on, kind of an application process for a particular job at a particular company. And they showed examples of how the people they hire interact with Chinese students. So that one is kind of a one that fits well with young moms that want the day free, but maybe are willing to get up at a pretty early time of day, which coincides with the, the school day or work day overseas.
My niece teaches English to Chinese children.
There you go.
In Beijing. She did it from my house one day. It was
a lot of demand for it. So there you go. That would be something that falls in that second category of professional. And the third category is support. So this would be customer service type jobs. That would probably be a good entry point for some people who don't yet have the particular knowledge or, education expertise for the other 2 categories. It could be a way that you get started and at least have a job, or maybe you just enjoy the kind of the flexibility of hours and so forth that you can. Well, it probably applies to all 3 categories, but I can see how you schedule a shift and you kind of have a defined work responsibility and have some flexibility beyond that in that customer service category. And that would be, answering phone calls for people that call in for customer service. It could be any range of companies.
Now, if these people come to St. John, where do they stay? I mean, if you get 18, I don't know if they'll all be upstairs, will they?
No. We'll probably just be working with some of the people we already have.
Okay.
Living in St. John. People want to move here for this.
Well, that's
I'm all for it. It probably is a good segue into one of the other things I was going to talk about today, which is that we're working on some housing plans. And long story short, if we were able to get the funding to carry out our housing ideas, they would be affordable for people who are probably making the incomes that are likely in these remote work fields. So we do see both elements of those as being needed. We need the jobs, but we also need the kind of housing that is affordable for the kinds of jobs we're creating.
There's a lot of moving parts with this, isn't there? But they're coming together now. The AmeriCorps,
Well, Kathleen has been very helpful in helping get this. She helped with this application.
Okay.
She's been helping with making the connections with rural and remote, and doing some research on, for example, some other shared workspaces around the country and what they're doing that's working for them. And she's going to be working along with Ashley in developing the kind of the policies that govern this whole program and space. So she's off and running. We do have 2 other positions available, one related to creating programming and helping with the restoration process at Gray's Studio. That could be a really fun opportunity. And our second one would be more related to strategic initiatives for the county of Stafford, and that could include our housing. We will potentially have a lot going on with housing in the next year to 2 years, and also the things that we're trying to do with industrial development.
Now, these AmeriCorps people are there now?
We have all 3 positions authorized.
Okay.
Where we have one person that's actually accepted a position, and we're still advertising the other 2.
Wow.
So our housing, I guess the one thing I didn't maybe touch on today that is kind of different or fun about our housing work is that we've developed a connection with the College of Architecture at K-State. And they've designed for us a prototype of a house that is energy efficient and less expensive to build than what we've been seeing with typical moderate income housing. So what we've struggled with is that even something that is commonly seen as moderate income housing has really not taken off in Stafford County because it's still outside the affordability range for what jobs we typically have.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to find a less expensive way to actually contribute to the housing development. The average house age in Stafford County is almost 90 years old. So I think if you look at the big picture, a lot of our problem is we had a lot of housing built back in the 19-teens or whatever when St. John was really getting going as a town. And yes, over the decades, there's been housing built and so forth, but there hasn't been a lot of consistent investment in housing, especially when I look at the 1990s and 2000s. There was just entire years that weren't a single house built in Stafford County. And so when we look now, we just overall don't have an inventory that's sufficient of houses that are in pretty good condition and, maybe not new price, affordable, again, to moderate incomes. And so we've got to find a way to crack that nut to get more housing in our inventory that isn't $200,000. And the housing we're trying to build here would be more at a $100,000 price point.
Okay. Bike and Build's going to be here, right?
They are.
Is it the same people every year?
It's not. Okay, it's a different crew every time. I think the route leaders have typically been on a ride in the previous year, but not necessarily the same route that they're on in this current year. So in other words, Bike and Build, I think, has 4 or 5 routes in total.
Well, you guys must have a good reputation. They keep coming back, right?
I think we have kind of developed a good rapport. We've really tried to make this a good experience for them, not just in the sense of the workday, but we've really tried to take some time to explain to them the kinds of affordable housing challenges that we think are especially prevalent in rural areas, which they probably don't see as much of as they do the urban kind of scenario.
Sure.
And then beyond that, we've also kind of just tried to give them a taste of what local life is like here. And we've taken them to a wheat field and let them ride in a combine and in a grain truck and some things like that in previous years. We've, made some specific efforts to offer food that is kind of unique to this area. So we do beer rocks, which nobody's ever heard of before, but it's kind of a local thing, I guess. And, with them coming in July this year, it wouldn't have typically worked out that we could
wheat harvest
but we're
going this
still
year.
getting to do wheat harvest with them. So I hope they'll find that special. And like I said, I do feel like we've kind of developed a good rapport with them.
Okay, real quick, we've got about 40 seconds to cover the photo contest
Yes.
at Stafford County Fair.
We do every year have a photo contest. If you would like to submit your photos, check our website out for details. But basically, you need to bring a printed photo the first day of the county fair, which is, I think, July 17th. And we offer cash prizes, and it's a nice way for us to be able to use photos from around the county in our website and other publications.
Carolyn Dunn, Stafford County Economic Development Director, with us here today on Focus Stafford County. If those buy and build people get bored, they just send them up here and stop by my house. I got a few things they can do. I'll give them a great experience as well. So, Carolyn, thanks. We'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.
That is our show today. Focus on Stafford County on 1590 KVGB, 97.7 FM. ABC News coming up next.